In this morning's Health Watch, AIDS awareness. This week marks 30 years since AIDS was first identified by the Centers for Disease Control. On Wednesday, President Obama said more needs to be done to stop AIDS discrimination, something one Tony-nominated play is trying to do. CBS News correspondent Seth Doane is here with more on that for us this morning. Seth, good morning.
Good morning, Chris. The Normal Heart has been nominated for 5 Tony Awards, including Best Revival of a Play. Originally opened in 1985, the new Broadway production is a moving reminder of how far we've come and how far we still have to go.
You tell them they may die.
You tell them.
Written over a quarter century ago, the heartache,
Serious with you.
fear, and frustration
He's dead now.
is just as real today.
I'm trying to understand why nobody wants to hear that we're dying.
Taking place in the early 80s, The Normal Heart is all about AIDS,
It was a real weeper.
though the word itself is never uttered because the disease was not yet identified.
Not understanding why their sons have suddenly upped and died from pneumonia.
Only its deadly consequences were.
The story is about somebody who all his friends around him died, and he tried to make the system pay attention, and the system wouldn't.
Playwright Larry Kramer based the main character, Ned Weeks, on his own life.
Welcome to gay politics.
A man outraged at those ignoring the disease.
I'm beginning to think that you and your straight world are our enemy.
I was not an activist until 1981, believe it or not.
Until AIDS.
Until AIDS, yes.
Back in '81, when those first cases appeared, AIDS was called a gay cancer. Little was known, though much was feared.
You glad I'm here?
2011 Tony nominee John Benjamin Hickey plays a New York Times writer who's in the closet, too afraid to write about the disease that's afflicting him.
It's impossible in the world we live in now with 35 million dead, to think of the beginning of that disease and nobody knowing what to call it or how you could get it.
The actors told us that the director told them to think of this as a horror story.
It was that. It's still a horror story.
AIDS rates continue to climb, with 7,000 new cases identified worldwide every day, giving reason for Kramer to keep fighting.
You will find Larry Kramer outside the theater, handing out a flyer, educating the audiences. I can't find what I'm looking for.
Also nominated for a Tony is Ellen Barkin,
You have to tell gay men to stop having sex.
who portrays one of the first doctors to recognize the disease. She vents her anger in a show-stopping monologue.
Do you think that it is my good fortune to have the privilege of watching young men die?
Her anger is not just on stage.
It's almost treated like any other STD that you have for life, but you deal with. That's not true. It's a lie. If you can afford the drugs that are available, you're already in the top 2% of the population, at least in this country.
It's an illness of minorities. It's an illness of people who do not have very good access to medical care.
Dr. Jonathan Jacobs has been treating AIDS patients since the beginning of the epidemic.
Are activists like Larry Kramer raising their voice today, 30 years later, for good reason?
Oh, the activists are definitely raising their voice for a good reason. Unfortunately, most of the activists from the early days have actually died of this disease, so there are fewer left.
You still think I'm sick?
But with The Normal Heart now on Broadway, Larry Kramer is affecting a new generation of audiences.
When I watched the play, there were people all around me in tears by the end.
Good, I wrote this play to make people cry. Good. It's the saddest thing I've ever known.
AIDS?
AIDS. The whole thing, not just the illness, the fact that people die needlessly. That's what makes you cry.
In the production, the real names of those who've died because of AIDS are projected on the stage. It's a tragic list that only continues to grow. The play is scheduled to remain on Broadway through July 10th.
And it is a brilliant play.
We've
talked
is.
to Jim Parsons, who's been on the program before. Alan Barkin is wonderful in it. James Benjamin Hickey, like you mentioned, also nominated for a Tony. For a play that sends such a wonderful message, and I want to give the impression to the people that it's this one real long, depressing play. It's brilliantly done, and it's very good.
And it's funny.
Yeah.
There are a lot of very funny moments through the entire production. The audience is laughing and crying, but mostly crying by the end.
But Mr. Kramer he's out there at the end handing out those pamphlets. He
is.
Seth, thank you very much.